going on YouTube? Mark here from TST Industries, back in the garage. And in today's video, I will be guiding you through the installation process of rear lighting equipment on your Yamaha Tenere 700. In this video, we will be covering the installation of our TST LED rear pod turn signal bundle, along with our universal license plate light. Now I should mention, on this bike, we already have the fairings off and have the OEM fender removed. We have gone ahead and installed our fender eliminator bracket on the rear fender assembly, which means we got rid of the extension on the rear, the OEM turn signal mounts, the OEM plate mount, and the OEM license plate light. We ditched that and went with a super clean installation method and finished look with our fender eliminator. Now I'm going to show you how to install LED rear pod turn signals along with our license plate light. Now this process will cover the installation of rear pod turn signals, which include our BL6 signals, our echoes, or any other pod signal we may develop and release in the future. If you purchase the bundle that is shown in this video, it will also include plug-and-play harness converters, which are verified in the North American market, as well as installation hardware. Now, two things to note: if you are based outside of North America, you may want to check the turn signal connectors on your bike before making a purchase, as you may have different turn signal connectors from what is shown in this video and on our product page. And the other tidbit of information to note is that if you are the type to use reflective hardware on your license plate or specialty hardware on your license plate, we understand that. If that is the case, the only hardware you would use from this pack of hardware we include are the 90-degree brackets. When we get to that portion of the assembly process, I will mention that and show the nuances. But without further ado, this is a pretty straightforward installation process. We are going to be installing the BL6 rear pod turn signals in order to match the front ones. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. Now, in order to begin this installation process, we do need to remove the tail light from the rear fender assembly. In order to do that, we're going to grab a 10mm socket and remove the nuts located on the back of the tail light. It is important to note, when you remove these nuts, there are washers located behind them. Now, with the nuts removed, we can easily slide the tail light out of this bracket and toss it to the side. One thing to note, there are shoulder washers located in these grommets that the studs from the tail light go into. You can either toss them to the side for now and save them for later, or if you keep them in there, just be sure you do not lose them during this process. Now, with the tail light removed, we will need to go ahead and remove this steel bracket located underneath the fender assembly. So let's go ahead and do that by removing these two bolts located in the wells in which were covered by the tail light. We will need a 5mm hex key or Allen key in order to remove these bolts. It is important to note, as you remove these bolts, there will be shoulder washers that will need to be removed with the bolts. Now, with that sub bracket removed, we can focus on routing the connectors for the turn signals. So at this time, we will go ahead and we will grab our harness converters. We will flip the fender assembly upside down, and in the center hole located near the two wells, we are going to feed our harness converters through about halfway, 3/4 of the way, ensuring that we have slack that can be connected into the bike side of things, but we also have enough wire length here to connect the turn signals. Now at this point, if you did want to install our universal license plate light, like this particular bike owner does, we will go ahead and route the wires in the same fashion that we have just done the turn signal harness converters. Now, our bracket is designed with a small relief cutout in the center, located in the top portion of the bracket, that will allow you to very cleanly run the wires for the license plate light and snake them all the way through, which should ultimately leave you with a look similar to this. And on the underside of the OEM fender, we have this small channel located right in the center that you can actually use to hold your plate light wire in place. If you want to give it a little extra slack, you can also do that. There's a really nice little feature built in, so we will utilize it. And now we will go ahead and feed the wires through the same hole as the turn signal wires, the turn signal harness converter wires, and then we will simply pull the excess all the way through. And just like that, you are now set up for success. At this point, we can go ahead and grab the steel bracket that we did remove, and we are going to go ahead and reinstall it at this time. You can see the wires are located in the channel that is bent into this bracket, and holding the bracket and flipping it upside down, we now have access to all of the connectors, and we will be routing them along the side of this sub bracket in which the taillight connects to. Let's go ahead and grab the bolts that we did remove and their shoulder washers, and by hand we will begin threading those bolts onto the welded on bosses. We're not going to bottom them out just yet. We want to ensure that we do have a little bit of play on this bracket if we need to pull more wire length through. Now at this point, we can focus on mounting the turn signals with the provided hardware to the fender eliminator bracket. Let's go ahead and toss our turn signals to the side and empty the contents of the provided hardware kit. In this kit, we should have two 90-degree brackets, two M6 bolts, two M6 kept nuts, and 6 washers. If you are the type that uses reflective hardware or specialty hardware to mount your plate to your bracket, at this point, you would go ahead and feed the hardware through the plate bracket and then through our provided turn signal mounting bracket like so, and then lock it down in place. Obviously, before you do that, you would route the bolt through the plate. Grab the bracket, feed your hardware and the locking hardware. And now we have an assembly that can hold the turn signals. It has your license plate locked in place, and the license plate light is there as well. We are not going to be using this reflective hardware, so at this time, let's go ahead and reset and showcase installation with our hardware. So with the brackets mocked up exactly where they should be, we are first going to go ahead and install the turn signals onto those 90-degree brackets. It is important to note that these turn signals are side specific. They should read with the TST Industries debossed logo on the back in a left to right motion, as you would read a book. So they are also featuring a flat side with the lens that will be located on the bottom of the signal, and the top of the signal has a small curve to it which will allow light to emit from the top. That's a nice way to indicate if you are mounting the signals in the correct orientation. So let's go ahead. We have our signals on the correct side of the bike. Let's go ahead and remove the nut and washer. Feed the wires through the 90-degree bracket in the circular cutout, not the slotted one. And we will follow that up with the washer and the provided locking nut for the turn signals. We're just going to make these snug. We're not going to bottom them out just yet. Once we have them on the bike and the bracket is on the bike, we will use a 13mm open-ended wrench in order to lock those nuts onto the turn signals. We'll repeat the steps on the opposite side. just like that, our turn signals are now mounted onto their mounting brackets, and we can secure the bracket and your license plate to our fender eliminator bracket and begin the reassembly process onto the bike. We'll begin this mounting process by grabbing one of the provided bolts, one of the washers, and your license plate. Feed the bolt and washer through the upper holes. Place one of the washers behind your plate. That will allow you to space it off and give ample room for our license plate light. You will feed that onto your fender eliminator bracket. Then you will grab the 90-degree bracket, another washer, and the provided locking cap nut, and begin securing it in place. We will make final adjustments with our tools. Let's first go ahead and get this secured to the assembly. Repeat the steps on the opposite side. And there you have it. Your turn signals and your license plate light are now mounted onto the rear fender assembly of your Tenere 700 with our TST Industries fender eliminator. Now, we're going to flip this entire assembly over and focus on this wiring that we have. It is important to note our harness converters do have 3 bullet connectors on them. We will only be using 2 of the wires. And the 2 wires we are going to focus on are the red and brown wires. We will not be using the blue wire. We will connect black to red and yellow to brown, and repeat that step and connection process on the opposite converter. Feed the rubber sleeves over the bullet connectors, ensuring they do not come in contact with each other or short out. Before we begin pulling the harness converters through and tightening all of the wire slack up, we do need to go ahead and isolate the blue wires from our harness converters and then secure the bullet terminals on the positive and ground wires. So we will grab some electrical tape. First, we will tape off these blue wires as they are not needed. Just like so. This will ensure that they do not come in contact with each other or any other components that are a part of this assembly. Now we're going to repeat that same taping method on our harness converters. What I like to do, and what I think everyone should follow, is we begin by isolating one of the connectors and locking it in place with our electrical tape. And with that converter locked in place, we will now tape it to the other connector in one clean bundle. And just like that, you now have your connections isolated, your wires that are not connected to anything terminated, and you are able to begin pulling some of this wire slack through the hole and ensuring that nothing is getting snagged on any portion of this assembly. So with the wires pulled through, we can now go ahead and begin the reinstallation process or reassembly process of the OEM taillight. Now it is important to note that when we remove the OEM signals from this assembly, they were routed through this small channel. We will be bypassing that process with the exception of our license plate light. And for the turn signal harness converters, we will be routing them through the center hole on this sub bracket that the main connector for the taillight goes through. Now we don't need the full length of the wire going through. Up into the bullet connectors is probably a safe bet. If you do need more, however, we can do that. Now at this time, let's go ahead and flip the fender assembly upside down, and you can actually see here there's a small channel in which we can route the license plate light wire through. I am going to give us a little bit of slack on the back end of it so that it's not pulling on the wire from the housing on the plate light. We'll be good to go on that front. We can see all the wires are channeled through this sub bracket nice and cleanly, and we can go ahead and tighten down these bolts that lock this sub bracket in place. Now there will still be some play in it because the 4 bolts securing the bracket on the rear portion of this assembly will be the ones that mount the entire fender to the bike and the subframe. Now let's go ahead and grab our tail light. We want to ensure that we do reuse the shoulder washers. If you did remove them, you can reinsert them at this time. And now you're going to feed the main tail light connector through this hole in the center where we just routed the harness converters. I'm going to pull that through, ensuring it's not getting snagged on anything, like so. And then the washers and the nuts will follow on the back side. Use our 10mm socket. We're very happy with the way this is looking. And now we can head on over to the bike and begin the reinstallation process and the routing of the wires. Coming on over to the bike, we do want to go ahead and secure the fender to the subframe, and then we are going to route the wires. So let's go ahead and toss the wires up top, ensuring they're not getting snagged on anything. Then we're going to make sure that these fins on the side of the tail light are clearing the inner fairing and sub tray, like so. And it does kind of self-lock itself in place, but let's take it a step further and reinstall the OEM fender bolts that we removed. Just securing it in place. We're not bottoming them out just yet. And these are those 10mm bolts that we removed from the OEM fender assembly. Now, with the fender somewhat secured onto the bike, we can focus on this wire routing. We're first going to go ahead and snake the main taillight connector and our license plate light connector along the right side of the bike. Now, all of the connectors we will be dealing with are located underneath this subframe brace, and you can actually see me poking them through here. Originally, they are routed on the left side of this frame. For this installation process, you have a few options here. You can either choose to feed these wires onto the other side of this brace, which puts no strain on the cables and ensures everything stays in the same general area. Or, if you'd like, if you remove your ECU from its mounting bracket, you will see a small zip tie which holds the connectors for your license plate light, your turn signals, and your brake light against the subframe. If you cut that zip tie, it will give you another 1 to 2 inches of wire length. The choice is entirely yours. What we are going to showcase in this video is a little bit of a mixture of both. We are not going to cut that zip tie, but we are going to go ahead and just feed the wires through a little bit, giving us some additional length, and we are going to feed them onto the right side of that subframe. So we advance the wire from the wire length from the beginning of the wire loom located next to the ECU. It goes behind a subframe support, and then we kind of just advanced it along within the zip tie, gave us another 1/4 inch, and then we moved the connectors on the other side of the brace. Now, we are going to be focusing on a gray and a black connector that look identical in shape and just have different colors. And then this additional gray connector is for your license plate light. We will save that for the end. Let's first go ahead and route the harness converters for your turn signals. So what we're going to do is take the harness converters, and you can route them along within this channel located on the left side of this subframe assembly. It clears all of the locking mechanisms for the seat engagement and any of these support posts. And as you can see, it's really, really clean routing it that way. There's no tension on the wires, and you will be able to connect both turn signals. What we're going to do now is connect one, check turn signal functionality. If we activate the right turn signal, that is flashing as well. The connection is good. Let's go ahead and deactivate the turn signals, turn your bike off, and clean up any of this wire routing if you are not 100% satisfied with it. Now, being that everything is connected and we know we have enough wire length, if you feel confident and comfortable, you can reuse this OEM wire routing clip and feed the wires onto there, locking them in place. Let's go ahead and connect our tail light, the main tail light connector, like so. Route that in there. And now the last connector we need to fiddle with is our license plate light connector. Now in this location, it is a little bit of a tight squeeze. If you are able to, you can pull it back onto the left side of this brace, and using the posse taps provided, we have a 3-piece posse tap system here. The upper portion has a small channel on it with a piercing element on the opposite side. That will go on the bike side harness. You will feed the wire through that channel, clamp down on it. It will pierce the wire, making a connection. And then the tapered, skinny end of this posse tap connector will be removed. And you will actually go ahead and take one of your wires on our license plate light, feed it through the connector like so. You can loop it back over the threads if you like, and then cinch it down back onto the main posse tap body. And essentially what you're doing is creating a conducive connection within this clean and reusable connector. They're very slim. I like them a little bit more than tap splice connectors. And on this particular bike, you will be connecting the black wire on our license plate light to the black wire on this connector, and the red wire on our license plate light to the blue wire on your license plate connector on your bike. So let's go ahead and do that now. If you need to, as you're pulling this, tugging on this license plate light connector gently, you will notice that the sheathing covers up a good portion of that assembly. If you have snips, wire snips or small scissors, you can cut a little bit of that sheathing, feed it forward, giving you access to more of the wire. So with a pair of snips, I'm simply going to go ahead, cut some of this sheathing off of this connector, giving us a little bit more room. And now, with that cut, I'm going to actually feed the connector back on to the right side of this frame, giving you viewers access to what I am doing. So as you can see, we're focusing on this small gray connector. Now I have gone ahead and removed the posse tap connector that we had installed on that wire, as at this point this is the proper installation method. So now I'm going to take off the upper portion of our posse tap connector, like so. It should be the portion with the channeled slot in it. Let's go ahead and toss that right here, hold it in place, and we are going to try and show this on camera. I know it's a little bit of a tight squeeze. Now we are going to feed the blue wire into the channel located on this half of the connector. And it is a little bit of a tight squeeze, so I'm going to do this and then I will show you the end result. Now we will take the larger portion of the posi tap connector with the piercing element and insert this into the channel and slotted portion we just installed. And as you can see here, we made a T connection of sorts on that blue wire. We still have full access to the black wire, and we will be ready to connect our license plate light. So let's go ahead and repeat those steps on the black wire at this point. And now both of the OEM wires are pierced in their individual and respective posi tap connectors, and we are able to remove the smaller end at this point. We have the smaller end freed, and that was the blue wire. So now we will take the red wire, feed it through the bottom like so, loop it over just a little bit, ensuring it stays in place, and now we will connect it to the rest of the posi tap connector. Now this is a very tight squeeze in here. There's not a lot of wiggle room, and Yamaha didn't do any favors by welding this sub brace on. Now we will repeat those steps for the black wire. All right, now with everything connected, let's go ahead and test the functionality of our plate light before we reassemble the bike. Our plate light illuminates. Now we can reassemble the fairings onto this bike and finalize this installation. Now with everything assembled, let's go ahead and finally tighten down our fender. All right, with the fender secured, we can now go ahead and make any final adjustments to the angle or the pitch of our turn signals using the 4mm socket we have, or Allen key we have, holding the bolt in the nut in place on the back side. Pretty happy with that angle. Looks about the same. And now the very last adjustments, grabbing our 13mm open-ended wrench and tightening down the nut on the back of the signals. As you do this, your signals will want to pivot, so it's best to hold it in place as much as possible. Let me just make a small adjustment to this turn signal, bringing it down. There we are. Now at this time, before we do go ahead and check the functionality of our turn signals, we do want to go ahead and clean up the wires that are behind coming from the signals into this fender assembly. If you have a zip tie, you can actually zip tie it to the license plate light wire, and it'll keep it nice and secure and tight against this entire assembly. Or if you have a small wire routing clip like the one I have here, these are very common for wire routing on computers and networking like that. They lock the cables in place wherever you'd like, and they are reusable. So if you have one of these, it's very handy. You can actually place it right in the middle of this assembly and route the wires through it, locking them in place. But I understand not everyone may have one of these, so let's go ahead and just cinch it with a zip tie. With that finalized, reinsert anything you may have removed from your rear seat compartment. Reinstall your seats. Let's go ahead and check our work. And just like that, this installation is now complete. As you can see, we have already cleaned up the rear of this assembly with our fender illuminator, and now with the addition of those crucial components like turn signals and a license plate light, you are ready to go for a ride. So if you want to check out this product, be sure to stop by our website, TST Industries. The link to this exact bundle will be in the description of this video. If you liked this video and found it helpful, be sure to give us a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to turn the notification bell on to stay up to date with all the new and exciting videos we've got going on. And lastly, don't forget to stop by our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all username TST Industries. For now, this has been Mark from TST, and we will catch you guys next time.